Denji and Yuji are two of Shonen's blockbuster protagonists. Both are flagship characters that shoulder the burdens of their stories, themes, and ideas, and both illustrate the grand sense of struggle you feel when staring down a 300 LP loss in your League of Legends match history. Now, there are a lot of memes putting the series in a similar vein. They share an extroverted protagonist with a simplistic viewpoint that grows over time, and both are part of groups that go out to protect the general public against supernatural forces. However, there is a much deeper connection between the two protagonists that explore two different sides of the same coin, and I believe that it's both the similar idea along with the differing explorations of that idea that make these two protagonists stand out from the crowd. My name is Josh, I'm the host of Beyond Media, and today we'll be analyzing Denji, Yuji, and what happens when a shonen protagonist is forced to kill. Let's start with everyone's favorite button masher, Yuji Itadori. Yuji is an interesting case for this idea because out of the two characters we're discussing today, Yuji far and away starts at a more morally holistic place. He starts the series with a very black and white view of both his motivations and his ideals that slowly get challenged over time. His views on death, and more specifically killing, are some of the most dynamic in the entire series. What it means to die a good death or live a good life is the central question surrounding Yuji's motivations. However, when it comes to killing, Yuji's early viewpoint is very rigid. In chapter 24 of the manga or episode 11 of the anime, Junpei asks if Yuji's ever killed anyone, to which Yuji replies that he never has. Junpei then counters saying that eventually he'll run into bad people who he might need to kill, to which Yuji says, "I'd still rather not kill anyone if possible. I mean, the choice to kill will definitely find its way to me. If I question the value of life at that point, then maybe the lives of those important to me also will become vague, and that scares me." Oftentimes in shonen, killing or the idea of killing is sort of thrown around as a casual part of life, almost as inevitable as getting stuck on the toilet after an intense Taco Bell session. But here, Yuji and JJK take a much more serious approach when it comes to taking another person's life. This kind of mentality Yuji displays isn't uncommon, and more often than not is actually used to suggest a darker side of what's presented as a morally upstanding character. For example, Batman refuses to kill not because it's just wrong, but because he fears what killing will make him. However, having this moral conflict come to the forefront of the narrative at this time is really brilliant, and that's because of two characters in particular, Mahito and Nanami. See, these two work in this arc to push Yuji towards a more mature viewpoint, both on death and killing. While it's easy to see how Nanami helps guide Yuji toward maturity, Mahito is arguably more important for Yuji's growth. When Mahito kills Junpei, Yuji found the words coming from his mouth came somewhere so deep within his soul it made everything he'd ever say feel like a lie. Yuji's viewpoint before making this mental switch was a very limited one. His immaturity and lack of perspective allowed him to hold on to what was, in hindsight, a very flawed perspective. He will need to kill at one point or another for one reason or another. To hammer home this shift in mental perspective, Yuji is forced to kill a few transfigured humans only a little while later. In chapter 31, Nanami and Yuji reflect on what happened a little more, with Yuji expressing his discomfort around what had happened. He doesn't even know what it means at this point to quote-unquote naturally die, now that he's taken someone else's life. Where Mahito forced Yuji to accept and adapt to his worldview in action, Nanami guides him through words. He says, quote, "Death comes for us all, but we all die differently. Making sure everyone dies a natural death sounds exhausting. I wouldn't recommend trying. Just like how you needed to save me today, there will be others who rely on you in the future. After all, you are now a Jujutsu sorcerer." Damn, well, that's heavy. The identity of a Jujutsu sorcerer is a brutal one within the world of JJK. It forces you to stare at the worst parts of humanity and stand against it with your chest out and shoulders poised for battle. Yuji's perspective on death continues to grow in chapter 63 when talking about the death of the death paintings. Nobara is ready to just move on from the killings because they are Jujutsu sorcerers, and these kinds of things happen in the business. But Nobara senses something is wrong and is able to be sensitive to Yuji's struggle here as he starts to open up, saying, quote, "He was crying for his brother who died in front of him. I'm happy that you and I survived, I'm relieved. Despite all of that, tears were shed because of the life I took. That's all." To which Nobara replies that means what happened tonight makes them accomplices. What I love so much about this scene is that it works and grows on both sides, that brings both of them to a fuller perspective on what killing means. JJK still treats killing as a heavy topic, but forces Yuji to go into a mindset that makes him a reluctant killer, while at the same time leading Nobara to be more thoughtful of what happens to those she kills as a sorcerer. Over the course of about 30 chapters, Yuji has gone from a character who cannot kill himself to a person who is willing to do it if it is necessary, even if it hurts him. You gotta wonder why so many people are drawn to JJK. I mean, obviously, right, it's the fights, hype moments, aura, but Gege does have the capacity for genuinely brilliant character writing at times. It's instances like these and the furthering of these ideas for Yuji during the Shibuya arc that really elevates the stakes in characters for me. During the Shibuya arc, Nobara is killed by Mahito after he just killed Nanami with Yuji as close eyewitness. This breaks Yuji's resolve as he struggles with the burden that Nanami passed down to him and the death of his close friend. Mahito begins to dismantle Yuji both physically and emotionally in a monologue that I believe still holds up. Mahito goes on to explore the deeper meaning of what's going on and how Yuji's perspective has put him in the wrong frame of mind since the beginning. Quote, "I bet you thought you were gonna do some pest control, or ghost extermination in some make-believe story. You came to Shibuya without real determination, didn't you? How naive, you stupid brat. This is war, not a battle to fix what's right or wrong, but a clash of truth, you and your fragile justice. You are me, Yuji Itadori. I kill without a second thought, just like how you save people without a second thought. These are instincts of a curse against the so-called dignity obtained by human reason. It is a battle to determine who will be left standing in 100 years. Tell me, Yuji Itadori, have you ever stopped to count how many curses you've killed? No, right? Me neither. Like I care about how many people I've killed.
And eventually, I'll forget all about you too."
Dude, Mahito is almost as bad as my league teammates. His words cut deep and temporarily break Yuji down until all he can do is cry and call himself a murderer. But Todo reminds him that Yuji is still a Jujutsu sorcerer. This then leads to the penultimate moment up until this point for Yuji's growth as a character in chapter 132. With everything that's happened in mind, Yuji defeats Mahito, prepared to kill him, ready to accept his broadened perspective of the world. That as a Jujutsu sorcerer, you must kill. Quote, "You're right, Mahito. I'm you. I wanted to reject you, convince myself that you were wrong. But that doesn't matter now. I'm gonna kill you. Even if you come back as another curse, I'll kill you. Change your name, change your form, I'll kill you again. I don't need to find a meaning or a reason. Maybe 100 years after my death, the meaning behind my actions will become apparent. In the grand scheme of things, I'm probably nothing more than a cog, but I'll keep killing curses for as long as I can. That's my role in all this." Wow, that is a lot of words that I just said, and almost all of them were insanely depressing, but are absolutely necessary for Jujutsu Kaisen's plot and Yuji's development around killing, and more importantly, how being forced to kill changed his worldview. See, what Denji and Yuji share in common is that they both need to learn something intimately important about killing. As we've gone over so far with Yuji, his need to kill forces him to sort of close off his heart, to accept the brutality of being a Jujutsu sorcerer. The naive views of a child are not acceptable in this world, but how does this overlap with the autism fiend? I mean Chainsaw Man. Well, while Yuji needed to learn and respect the importance of killing, Denji needed to learn and respect the importance of life. When you look at how Denji approaches killing, murder, or the idea of taking someone's life, or even those close to him dying, he isn't able to understand it. Yuji had too much of a heart, and Denji didn't have enough. And the reason I think that this matters, and why I think it's so fascinating that these two have prevailed as the strugglers of modern shonen, is I think they are often perceived as this genre's version of Guts, who—
Dude! Our audience doesn't like Berserk. Stop talking about it.
I like it. Me!
Kill.
Regardless, the two of these do share a sort of forced growth around that idea of levity and taking a life, just in opposite directions. But before we talk about the chainsaw of autism himself, I'd like to take a second to ask if you enjoy this content to maybe consider subscribing. 99% of you aren't subscribed, and if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments. Anyway, the first time Denji really starts to question his relationship with death and killing is when he watches Aki mourn the loss of Himeno. Up until this point, Denji has taken multiple lives and has grafted itself into part of his sense of normalcy. Whereas Yuji rejects the idea of killing for preservation of his character, Denji has been forced to accept it and adapt in order to survive. But when he sees Aki cry, he starts to think for himself and consider what exactly he's feeling, or maybe more accurately, what he isn't feeling. Quote, "It is sad. A lot of his coworkers died apparently, and even Himeno died too. Wait, I don't feel like crying though. When Pochita died, I was sad, but when Homeno died, she was the first person who wanted to be friends with me. Doesn't that make me pretty awful? Would I cry if Power died? Nah, that wouldn't make me cry. But if he died? Nope. What about Makima? If Makima died, I would probably just be depressed for a bit. But after 3 days or so, I'd probably be back to enjoying my life. I mean, just having 3 hots and a cot and getting to take a bath is already pretty awesome to me. Did I lose my humanity when I lost my heart? Denji instantly shakes this off in only the way he can, I guess, but his thoughts here go a long way in showing us where his headspace is at and what he needs to learn. As we talked about on this channel before a few times, Denji at this point in the story is someone who not only lacks human connections but also cannot understand them. It isn't that he lost his humanity when he lost his heart, it's that he never learned to be human in the first place. Kinda just like my league team. However, slowly across the rest of the series, small things begin to add up and allow Denji to feel love and affection for other people. Makima, Reizi, Power, Aki all play into this insurmountably. There are of course things like Makima's reworking of Denji's perspective on intimacy, but most of it has to do around stuff found in part 1 of CSM's manga, so if you're looking to dodge spoilers, I suggest you click off from here on out. In chapter 39, Denji and Makima are watching a series of films together, and while this scene means a lot in the context of the overall series, while discussing a movie that made both of them cry, the idea of Denji not having a heart comes back up again when he asks Makima if she thinks he has one, to which she presses her head against his chest and confirms that he does indeed have one. To which Denji says, quote, "I did have one." What this use of did could be implying specifically could mean a lot of things, but overall I think it's more or less used to allow Denji to recontextualize everything that has happened in his life thus far, including things like Aki's crying scene a few chapters earlier. Of course, Denji's heart thematically continues over the course of the Bomb Devil arc, where he allows himself to reciprocate things of human affection and care solely because he has a human heart. This is where Reizi as a character starts to become really important because of how his new discovery influences his relationship with her, but we're saving our analysis of that until the movie comes out. If it ever comes out. But the most important section of this arc comes when speaking about how everyone wants the chainsaw heart, but nobody wants Denji's. It's interesting that this is the gripe he has at this moment because not long after, he ends up realizing and being with people who do want and care about his heart, Aki and Power. Now, we just did videos on these two, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I firmly believe that it's his relationship with Power that allows him to explore the depths of his own heart, and his relationship with Aki that lets him explore the relationship with death and killing. The 3 of them had grown together, and each found themselves within the others. However, the connection that Denji has with Aki ends up being the very thing that teaches him so much about death. After Aki becomes the gun fiend, Denji is the one that is forced to kill him. And I really love how this panel here communicates Denji's sheer shock and heartache to what just happened, almost as if he can't believe it. The boy who had once had a too casual relationship with death is now forced to confront the brutal and cold reality of it. When reflecting back on all that had happened, Denji really realizes that he is the one that killed Aki, and he vomits everywhere, saying that his head is a total mess. In the next chapter, Denji says, quote, "I killed Aki because maybe it looked like 100 people were going to die if I didn't stop him. But once I calmed down and thought about it really hard, I realized maybe there was a better way. Maybe Aki only had to die because I was stupid." Once again, this scene means a lot in the overall context of the greater themes of the story, but it's incredible to see that not only did Denji mourn after Aki's death after previously saying he wouldn't, but the fact that he did cry for Power as well. It really shows off the tremendous growth he's gone on as a character, along with maturing his viewpoint on death. And regardless of where Yuji and Denji started on their journey and relationship with both death and killing, they arrive more or less at similar conclusions. That killing is necessary and it can hurt. Maybe it's the necessity for the lives that they lead in the world they participate in, but it ends up grieving them both. Yuji just needed to let go of his innocence and Denji needed to be reminded of it. And I think that perhaps that with all these similarities between these two series, this sole small distinction opens them up to completely different emotions and journeys that they are able to feel so intimately similar, but still so fundamentally different. Wow, that was a lot. We're trying to make these videos less, and a bit more fun and enjoyable to watch, so any feedback, positive or negative, would be much appreciated. If you enjoyed this, you might like some of our other stuff. Anyway, until next time, keep dreaming.